What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
To take bigger risks. You know, as the daughter of an immigrant, as a first-time business owner who didn't have any sort of like resources or wherewithal to get questions answered, I was always trying to hedge my bets. And so I'll never forget. I actually wrote about this on in a blog post. Is I was sitting in my friend's car. So there's a gaggle of girls in the back and I was sitting in the passenger seat, and her dad in his Astro minivan was driving us. And he asked me what I thought was a really odd question. He turns to me, well, all the girls are in the back, and he says, Jasmine, how would you eat a hamburger? And I thought to myself, well, that's a really odd question. And I was like, well, I would eat a hamburger the same way anybody else would. I would eat half of the hamburger and then save the other half for when I knew my next meal was coming. And when I knew my next meal was coming, then I'd eat the hamburger. And he kind of slowly nodded. And then later he ends up telling my parents that response. I didn't think anything of it. And now that I am an adult, I clearly understand the way I was hardwired as a kid. Because we lacked money, I was always looking for ways to keep and maintain what I had if I thought it was going to disappear. So I took that mindset going into starting businesses. I was always trying to be like, how do I keep or maintain? But what I wish I can go back to do when I was in my 20s was take all the risks and be unattached to the outcome. Because when somebody would say, take all the risk, I'd be like, you're crazy. I need half of my hamburger until I know my next meal is coming. What I wish I would have known is be unattached to the outcome. I was so attached to the outcome. I was so fear driven of never getting to where my parents were financially that I stopped myself because oh no, that's a little too risky. If I had just said, hey, keep what you need to feel safe and everything else, take a calculated risk and make them bigger because you always have found a way to win.
What is your best business advice that you would give someone else?
I'm going to give the advice that I heard my third year of business. I was sitting with a group of other photographers who were farther in their career, and I had always found a way, even though I couldn't afford to get educated specifically in the photography realm because there was very high ticket experiences, I would find a way to leverage what I thought I was good at in exchange. I'm a firm believer in bartering. Bartering is my favorite thing. And so I realized that while I'm not necessarily a copywriter, I wouldn't classify myself as a writer. I had a blog I had a blog at the time. I still have a blog, but at the time I was blogging every single day, and other photographers started noticing the quality of work that I was doing. And so I found a photographer in my area. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I said, hey, would I be able to go to your event and write a few blog posts about your event? And in addition to, if you let me come, could I also write your bio, for your website? Cause I gave a little preview. I was like, his bio was just great photographer, love my camera. And I kind of wrote just the first paragraph of what could be his bio based on things that I had read about him on the internet. And he was just yes. So I got into this room, and what he said, I felt like it just pierced my heart. And this is the thing that I will tell everybody again and again. He said, jump and the net will appear. And it was the first time in my entire life that I had ever heard somebody speak so brazenly about taking a risk. Again, who I am now as a risk taker is so different than who I was when I began. And the way that you strengthen that risk muscle is by taking risks. And when he said that 3 years into it, I realized, okay, now is the time for me to start taking those risks. I wish somebody would have told me that sooner. And this is always the advice I always go back to: jump and the net will appear.
Yeah, I totally believe that too. I think I'm a strong believer, you jump and the universe will catch you. So I'm very much all about that. Yeah.
But here's the thing, this is the thing I just let's just be real, right? People hear that jump and the net will appear, jump and the universe has your back, and we love it. We're high-fiving because we've been on the other side. But there have been plenty of times where there was no net and the universe was just I see you, I'm not putting my arms out, because you needed to fall on your face. And I've just realized that as many times as I have gotten back up, I was supposed to fall. I was supposed to face plant. And the less time I spend groveling in the gravel, the faster I find my next success. The biggest difficulty is that people fall and then they stay down. The greatest entrepreneurs are the people who understand that falling is part of the process. So if we just said, I'm going to fall now and I'm going to fall probably another 175 times before the end of my career. If I look around and say, this is normal and every entrepreneur faces this, then yeah, it sucks. And yeah, I took the jump and yeah, I didn't end up where I wanted to, but do I have the courage and wherewithal to get up again? And if the answer is yes, you're going to be in business. And the answer is no, you're going to go back to your cubicle and live a very predictable life that is not as fulfilling as you once hoped.
100%. Like failure is progress no matter what, right?
Absolutely.
You just got to get up. Yeah.
And every successful person that you hear about their success story, you hardly ever hear about all of their failures, right?
Right.
Because no one writes about the websites that didn't work, all the brands that you tried, all the things
YouTube
you
channels
posted.
that don't take off.
The YouTube channels, in our case, that didn't work out. We've got a long list, but we've got also now a long list of ones that have succeeded.
Yeah, correct.
And I love that. Yeah. There was one piece of the story I wanted to go back to, which was, so you were a top 10 wedding photographer in the world, and then you shifted away from that. So why did you shift away, and was it just taking the risk, or was it income coming from your social security business? Like, how did you make that shift and why?
Yeah, it was one of those moments all over again where it's science. Like a study I read that our body regenerates, like our cells regenerate like every 7 years. So every 7 years you become an entirely different person. And I have seen that ebb and flow in my business so distinctly that the minute that something was complicated and difficult and impossible and then decided to go after it, like I thought it was impossible or difficult to ever position myself as an authority to be a consultant. I thought it was impossible. I thought it was impossible to ever create a course, much less create revenue streams of multiple 7 figures in the back of courses. Then I thought it was impossible to create a membership. And then I thought it was impossible to start a tech company. So the earliest part of my career was I want to become a photographer, and then I want to become a successful photographer. And then all of a sudden the game got really slow. I could predict my income. I could predict the publicity. I could predict the resources. I could predict the connections. I could predict the publications. And when I predicted it, I loved it and I appreciated it. And then I just didn't want it anymore. And if you don't show up in your business loving what you turn over for your customers or your clients, your business is in decline. And I thought I must show up 100% for the people who hire me. And if I am not, my time has come. And that's when I started to make shifts in my business.
Yeah. You have to be passionate about it. Like so passionate, right?
Absolutely.
What's the worst advice you've ever seen or heard being dispensed in the world?
I mean, I feel like I'm going to get a lot of heat for it, but I see a lot of people talking about like manifesting, like dreaming it into reality. And I believe that. I believe that you can't create what you have not thought or dreamt of. But the biggest gap in the misnomer is that it should, in my opinion, always be supplemented and counterbalanced by that's just the first step. Manifestation alone doesn't bring out results. It's the manifestation and then the actions combined that will help you meet your aspirations, because your actions must map your aspirations. I believe that manifestation is the key component. It is the impetus. It's the thing that gets us started. But then people are just like, well, I'm dreaming and it's just not happening for me. I'm like, no. It does not happen for you. You must happen to it. And so the misnomer is that like you dream it up and it will happen. I'm like, no. You dream it up and then you work like hell to make it happen and it will happen.